Now remember, man, the 50 caliber bullet is so strong that it is a violation of the very rules of war, and you are not allowed to fire this at enemy combatants. This is only authorized to be fired at enemy material, like trucks. But the enemy's canteen is also material, so make sure you aim for that. All right, you've probably heard some variation on that somewhere because, man, that story has gotten some legs to it, despite the fact that it is completely wrong on like 3 different levels. So first off, it's usually referred to as something about the Geneva Convention. Geneva Convention has nothing to do with this. If there is one treaty that's relevant to this sort of question, it's the Hague Convention of 1899, which does include a clause prohibiting the use of bullets that expand or flatten easily in the human body. And the purpose there was simply the idea that an expanding bullet does a whole lot more damage to a person, but it doesn't actually convey any significant military advantage. In 1899, like, shot is shot. So in the interests of being a little more humane, let's just not use those bullets. The US did, in fact, sign that convention, and that's why the US doesn't use expanding bullets in combat, although the Justice Department has come up with some language allowing their use of hollow points in pistols for things like guarding prisoners and guarding bases. But that's a separate issue. There is nothing in there about caliber, about size of the bullet, about anything like that. The second thing that people will bring up in the "but actually what if" is the idea that you can't use exploding bullets, and there are some explosive 50 caliber bullets. Well, that law of war comes from the 1868 St. Petersburg Declaration. The Russians had just designed an exploding bullet that they wanted to use to blow up ammunition wagons. And they realized it could be made, you know, it's a rifle bullet, it could be made to explode in a human body, and that's pretty darn nasty, and they thought that would be a bad idea to use, and they suggested perhaps we should all just get together and agree not to use it, and they set a minimum weight of projectiles with explosives equal to essentially the smallest artillery shell of the time, and said we won't use anything smaller than that explodes. The US was not a signatory to that in 1868. The US wasn't a significant international power, and nobody bothered to invite the US to that conference. We never signed it. It's not relevant. Now, the problem is this story is false, and so it's tempting, the story of like, shoot for their equipment. That's totally bogus. There's absolutely no legal standing, nothing to it. But you hear it so often that it sounds like it must be true, and it's tempting to listen to some vet who goes, yeah, they told me that you can't fire a 50 against a human, but you can shoot their belt buckle with it. It's tempting to tell that person, like, no, obviously you're wrong, you're lying, that's all totally false. The problem is this story got traction amongst guys who were training soldiers. Like, the drill sergeants took up this idea and passed it along, probably because it sounds cool and hardcore. And so I think most of the people who say, oh yeah, I got trained that you couldn't shoot a guy with a 50, they probably did, but that doesn't actually mean that it's right. It means their drill sergeant told them, and their drill sergeant was wrong on the whole thing. It's also possible that some of these stories originated from attempts to conserve ammunition, like, we don't want you guys to be blasting all the 50 ammo at one dude hiding in a bush. So, you know, maybe we'll, like, if you shoot at him with that 50, we're going to court-martial you and you'll be in big trouble, mister. So maybe he won't dump all the 50 ammo. But that's purely speculative. Where exactly this story came from is kind of anybody's guess. The 50 has been around for about 100 years at this point, so could have come from anywhere. However, it is an idea, a meme, a trope that sure got legs, and it still gets around. So now you know there is in fact nothing illegal about shooting an enemy combatant with a 50 BMG, or frankly any other cartridge. You know, there's nothing against the internationally recognized laws of war about shooting a dude with a 105mm howitzer if you figure out a way to do it. So anyway, just a short little video. This came up in the comments of yesterday's Swiss anti-material rifle video, and I figured I haven't ever talked about that, so we might as well address it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and learned something. Thanks for watching.